Ladies and gentlemen, the global investment landscape is being reshaped by shifting global power dynamics. And so, coming up next is the Global Leaders Debate, and that is on the new wave of a globalized investment landscape towards a new balanced world structure. This critical discussion, ladies and gentlemen, will be analyzing the evolving geopolitical and economic trends that are influencing global investment flows. Therefore, this will be moderated by His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Muhyiddin, an economist with over 30 years of experience in international finance and development. His Excellency currently serves as an executive director at the International Monetary Fund, and we are privileged to have him part of this session. And for we now move to welcoming him, and as he will be welcoming and introducing your, of course, high-level speakers. Can we all give His Excellency a welcome?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Gives me a great pleasure to moderate this session. We have distinguished speakers, and I was asked by the organizers to introduce them one by one. But before doing so, let me share the previous speakers in congratulating the organizers for having this summit, and to reflect my utmost pleasure to be here in the United Arab Emirates and to see the vibrant city of Abu Dhabi giving us many signals of hope and development. So let me ask the panelists, and some of them are just joining us now, to come to the plenary session. We'll start by His Excellency Sheikh Ibrahim bin Khalifa Al Khalifa, the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions, AWOFI. And I like as well if His Excellency is with us. That would be great if he can join us now. And let me as well welcome the Vice Prime Minister and Deputy Chairman of the Cabinet of Ministers of Turkmenistan, His Excellency Hujamairat Gildmi Radov. So His Excellency the Vice Prime Minister and Deputy Chairman of the Cabinet of Ministers of Turkmenistan. Excellency, please. Any place. You can just join us here. Thank you. Thank you so much, Excellency. And may I welcome as well His Excellency Rustam Minikhanov, of the Republic of Tatarstan. Excellency, the head, Republic. Please join us, Excellency. And we have as well the Vice Chairman of Ving Group, Madam Thui, the Vice Chairwoman. Madam Vice Chairwoman, welcome to the panel. And welcome to the panel, Madam. And we have His Excellency Gunther Oettinger, the former European Commissioner for Energy, Digital Economy and Budget, and the former Minister and President of the German state of Baden-Württemberg. Right. May I welcome as well the Prime Minister of Congo, Excellency Madam Prime Minister Judith Tuluka. Madam Prime Minister, it's a great honor to have you with us. We are now ready to engage in a very dynamic discussion providing solutions. I hope. I don't know what exactly our distinguished speakers have prepared us for, but I'll be very much keen to get solutions for partnerships, for investment, for trade, and for cooperation. I think we had a great start by the presence of His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Zayed with us, and of course the inspiring and very well spoken words of the President of Armenia and His Excellency the President just now, and of course the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, and the introductory remarks to our summit by His Excellency Minister El Zayudi. If I get some starting points just to get us beyond the difficulties, it's a moment that we have to be ready. In investment in human capital, the issues related to job creation have been emphasized. Matters related to the need for young populations. How can we be ready for their future? We are concerned, as we are all, with the kind of disruptions facing the global economy, but for such a gathering, they are not expecting listing of problems and difficulties that we are all aware of. They are after solutions. But just in case, we need a reminder, and I hope that we go beyond what I'm going to say, because as I said, we are after solutions and measures, and we have some good questions for all of the panelists with us. So officially, with no doubt today, our world is at war, trade war. 2025 may come in history as the year which witnessed the end of the world order as we know it since the Second World War. Growth is in decline. Inflation expectations are high. So it's very likely than not that we're going to be seeing growth this year in 2025, much less than anticipated just 3 months ago. Inflation is going to be higher, with impact on developing economies and emerging markets in terms of the readiness to deal with the implications of a mix of low growth and high inflation. A frequently searched for term is stagflation, and the likelihood of stagflation, including in some of the advanced economies, cannot be ruled out. This will have implications on debt for countries suffering today from debt distress, which are the majority of developing economies and emerging markets. Impact of inflation on interest rates policies cannot be undermined, and exchange rate volatility will make our good friends at the different central banks, and we have a session later today with ministers of finance and governors of central banks who are going to be discussing these issues with them, monetary and fiscal policy coordination. What we could really be expecting then, after all of these recent tariff measures, if they are not going to be contained earlier, we can see further trade disruptions, trade divergence. Perhaps some countries might face trade dumping. Meanwhile, there are measures that we need really to consider at the national level, and we have distinguished heads of state and governments with us in this panel. We need really to explore as well options at the subnational level, at local impact. I'm happy as well that in the interventions, areas related to regional cooperation were mentioned by previous speakers. There could be options of new bilateral arrangements, and I'm happy to listen to His Excellency the President of Armenia saying that he is not just coming as a political head, but he's coming accompanied by a mission of traders and Commissioner for Investment and Trade, seeking business with the UAE and beyond, which is the right thing to do now. And the world as well is prepared in a few weeks for a Finance for Development conference, a conference that happens every 10 years, discussing domestic finance, external finance, dealing with public debt management, FDI, areas related to science, technology, and innovation, areas related to trade, and systemic issues, including the future of international financial organizations. To answer the questions, we can always innovate, but there are some very well-known solutions for such challenges to deal with disruptions. Investment in human capital, in health and education, investment in infrastructure and digital transformation. His Excellency Minister Aziudi told us about the digital readiness of the UAE and the diversification as well of its economic pathways. But now let me get that into action through the distinguished speakers. And by the order of speakers provided to me by the organizers, I like first to start by His Excellency Sheikh Ibrahim bin Khalifa Al Khalifa, with his capacity as the chairman of the Board of Trustees of AWOFI, which is the accounting and auditing organization for the Islamic financial institutions, and his keen interest in many dimensions, including encouragement of entrepreneurships and financial inclusion, and again, with my plea and request to focus on solutions. So we have two questions, and I think we are limited, as always, in time, so we'll try to make it interactive, and we'll give each speaker like 4 or 5 minutes maximum, and we hope to come back with other questions after that. But if we can start with you, Excellency.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much for the introduction. I would like to start by extending my appreciation and gratitude for the organizer and for the United Arab Emirates. It's always a privilege to come back here and speak in front of this distinguished gathering. To start with, to speak about the subject you have asked, I would like, if you, with your permission, to just to focus on the countries where we are working with it. And the countries we are working with it have a specific criterion, which is, it is a very young nations. Countries like us have a huge, almost 2/3 of its population is below the age of 30. This put tremendous pressure on the management of that. And on many cases, like what happened to Bahrain, with the help with the Republic of Germany, that we have redone, when I was at the Ministry of Finance, the future of Bahrain by one statement was the term of reference: please double the GDP in order to swallow the group. And that was have hidden the emphasis you just mentioned. And they said that to drive that forward, you have education, 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 and then health. Concentrate on the growth of the workforce that they have to make their income into that. Now, one of the biggest issues we have is that you just mentioned is the MSME, micro, small, and medium businesses, and to how to do the so-called now under your the IMF inclusion, and we call it equity participation. It is the right of the people to have access to finance. It is the right to everybody that he will never be left behind. And going from this, the whole of standard setting for the financials of the Islamic institutions have to be enhanced accordingly. The growth of Islamic financials is huge on the liability side. It is almost eating everybody, driving everybody out. The problem is that how we can concentrate that growth into the asset side. The other thing is also that sectorial. The number of assets going to the gender, there is no gender qualification. Most of it, the ladies and the women and the children and something like that, get much, much less into that. With that in mind, we are driving the force here, and we are encouraging them, especially in our area, Southeast Asia, West Asia, the whole of Africa, and the central of that. The amount of money that we are reaching almost, we are closing now $4 trillion into that. The number of people by 2025 will be so much that the consuming capability, maybe 1/3 of the whole world will be in our area. So we are driving into that with the force. Now, how we are going to achieve that, please stop me if I have gone too far, is that I am really very privileged to be associated with the UNIDO for the last 20 or 30 years. And we have developed through the office in Bahrain, the ETDB, is the so-called the Bahrain model, which is now almost implemented in 57 countries. It is functioning very well, it is moving very well, and we are having access to that. But mainly, the funds is available. There is no shortage of fund. And I give you one example. The problem is the support services, which the United Nations, UNIDO, through the EDB, have covered that, and we are moving forward. Now, do we have money? Yeah, we have money. I can give you one example, and you are a master of that, which is the Waqf. The total Waqf now is in excess of $1.6 trillion. So if anybody says that there is a shortage or there is poverty in the Islamic world, it is a poverty by choice. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you so much. Very inspiring comments. And yeah, it's got some reactions from the floor as well, because normally when we have these ambitious kind of a program like investments in human capital, it's great that Your Excellency emphasized the importance of human capital, education, and education. It's good that the model as well is being shared. You mentioned 57 countries. Are these the members of the OIC,
Yeah.
the Organization of Islamic Countries?
And which also, which you say that apply the Bahrain model into that. There is almost more than 7,000 man day have worked into that. We have solicited tremendous support from the United Nations and from the UNIDO. They have built that on experience, and it has been now, as you can see, it is implemented in all these countries. India, for instance, China, and you go on. These are massive growth.
Yes.
And I have to tell you that we visited China almost every 6 weeks. And now China, and if I can talk about a place called Shenzhen, it is living in 2070. They have nothing to do with 2025.
Yes.
And it's going like, and you will see it, inshallah, developing. One big example, maybe everybody know, which is the car industry, which you will see now how it goes, inshallah, eventually, what we can see.
Yeah, I've been there. I saw their Museum of the Future for 2070. Normally museums are about the past, but they have a museum about the vision for the future. It's good as well that Your Excellency mentioned as well a source of or untapped resources coming from Waqf or trust finance, which is one of the areas of potential pools of investments that we can capitalize on, because we need that definitely more in the future. All right, so let's move on. We have the Deputy Chairman of the Cabinet of Ministers of Turkmenistan, the Vice Prime Minister, His Excellency Hojmeirat Goldi Miradov. So I think that will get us into different dimensions of the discussion, Excellency, with your participation. One is basically your country is rich in natural resources, which you are dealing with differently by capitalizing on the value added, not just in energy resources, but minerals, and you are trying to diversify the economy through this endowment. And the other thing is basically that you are not stopping at national level, but you are focusing on local impact, and you have as well engagements in regional policy, including outreach to not just your immediate neighbors, but to the South Asian countries. So the floor is yours, Excellency, to share your experience and what you are expecting from this distinguished crowd of top investors, financiers, and policymakers.
Спасибо большое, уважаемые участники, дамы и господа. Прежде всего, хотел бы передать слово приветствия, пожелания успешной работы всем участникам заседания от его превосходительства президента Туркменистана Сердара Бердымухамедова, а также поблагодарить руководство Объединенных Арабских Эмиратов за гостеприимство, радушный прием и высокий уровень организации ежегодной инвестиционной встречи. Это важное мероприятие становится уникальной платформой для обсуждения ключевых вопросов глобальной экономики, устойчивого развития и инновационных подходов, которые могут помочь нам всем двигаться вперед. Уважаемые участники, текущий год для Туркменистана весьма знаменитым. Как известно, по инициативе нашей Генеральной Ассамблеи Организации Объединенных Наций принял резолюцию о провозглашении 2025 год Международным годом мира и доверия. Мы уверены, что мир, доверие, равноправие, взаимные выгоды должны составлять основу экономического партнерства. Любые крупные экономические, инфраструктурные, торговые, инвестиционные проекты могут быть успешными только при условии равноправия и обоюдного доверия. Одним из основных приоритетов Туркменистана является развитие стратегических направлений нашей экономики, в частности энергетического сектора. Как страна с богатыми природными ресурсами, Туркменистан активно занимается модернизацией и диверсификацией энергетической отрасли, стремясь реализовать проект, который обеспечивает энергетическую безопасность не только для нашего региона, но и для всей мировой экономики. Особое внимание мы уделяем развитию инфраструктуры для транспортировки энергетических ресурсов Туркменистана благодаря своему географическому расположению и является важным транзитным звеном на пути энергоносителей из Центральной Азии в мировые рынки. Примером тому является газопровод Туркменистан, Афганистан, Пакистан и Индия. Программа ТАПИ. Проект ТАПИ является одним из значимых проектов как для Туркменистана, так и для Центральной и Южной Азии. На международной конференции «Годы мира доверия» в роль регионального экономического сотрудничества, обеспечения устойчивого развития, которое прошло в Ашхабаде 19 марта 2025 года, в этом году. Национальный лидер наш туркменского народа, герой Аркада, подчеркнул, что цель проекта ТАПИ – обеспечение в современной эпохе природными газом стран с общей численностью 1 миллиард 750 миллионов человек, говоря о проекте газопровода ТАПИ. Уважаемый национальный лидер сделал особый акцент на его высоком социальном значении. По оценкам экспертов, строительство газопровода и сопутствующих инфраструктурных систем, новых учреждений и предприятий позволит создать в Афганистане 12 тысяч рабочих мест, а также решить в этой стране ряд ключевых гуманитарных проблем. Сегодня мы уверенностью можем сказать, что работа по данному проекту ведется в соответствии определенной программой. Построены уже 214 километров участок этого газопровода, проходящий по территории Туркменистана. В сентябре прошлого года был дан старт строительству 153 километров участка Серхедабад-Герат, именуемого Аркадан-Акголи. В настоящее время его строительство ведется на территории Афганистана. Туркменистан – один из основных стран, производящих электроэнергию. На протяжении многих лет мы осуществляем поставки электроэнергии в соседние страны – Иран, Афганистан, Узбекистан, Киргизстан. Наша страна также совместно с партнерами эффективно работает на претворение в жизнь проекта строительства высоковольтной линии электропередачи Туркменистан, Афганистан, Пакистан. В настоящее время электроэнергия уже поставляется в город Герат, Афганистан. Также идет работа над техническим документом для продолжения данной линии через эту страну до Пакистана. Вместе с тем осуществляется прокладка сопутствующих оптоволокнистых линий связи. Необходимо отметить, что на туркменском побережье Каспийского моря продолжается строительство электростанции комбинированного цикла мощностью 1574 мегаватт, который позволит экспортировать электроэнергию через Каспийское море, в соседних государствах, в том числе и Турецкую республику, а оттуда в другие страны. Хотел бы также отметить, что компания Объединенных Арабских Эмиратов Dragon Oil работает в Туркменистане с 2000 года на основе соглашения о разделе продукции, заключенного с правительством нашей страны. Компания осуществляет разработку и добычу нефти и газа на договоренной территории Чиликен, включающей 2 морских месторождения в Каспийском море. И за 25-летний период сотрудничества эта компания вложила около 10 миллиардов долларов США в разработку нефтегазового месторождения Туркменистана и добила 447 миллионов баррелей углеводородов. Приход компании в туркменский нефтегазовый сектор способствовал значительному притоку инвестиций и внедрению современных технологий. И среди ключевых направлений дальнейшего сотрудничества компаний с туркменской стороны увеличивается объем добычи и переработки углеводородов, а также расширение экспорта туркменской нефти и газа и газохимической продукции. А также в феврале 2021 года Фонд развития Абу-Даби и Государственный банк внешнеэкономической деятельности Туркменистана создал туркменскую инвестиционную компанию с уставным капиталом $100 миллионов США. Также за счет средств фонда Абу-Даби подписаны 2 соглашения о финансировании инфраструктурных проектов, строительства аэропорта в городе Джебель, Балканском вилаяте, что повысит качество транспортных услуг и гибридной электростанции мощностью 10 мегаваттов. Пользуясь случаем, хочу выразить благодарность правительству Абу-Даби и, в частности, Фонду развития Абу-Даби за вклад участия в развитии Туркменистана.
Right.
Коротко, так.
Right. Thank you so much, Excellency. Thank you so much. This is a great journey of different aspects of development you highlighted, including the issues related to the regional policy and the bilateral arrangement that you are having, including, of course, between your country and the United Arab Emirates. You emphasize the importance of the translation to His Excellency. Is it working now, Excellency? Can you change the... Is it working, the translation? Can I speak again? Right. So let's continue with the discussion. I hope that the translation is coping with us and these.
Что-то переводом нас.
Yeah. Okay. Let me move on. Perhaps I can come back to Your Excellency after that when your translation comes back, and apologies for this. But again, generally speaking, what His Excellency emphasized is the importance of the regional cooperation, bilateral arrangements, having trust between the partners, and in the different areas, he emphasized as well is this issue of capitalizing on natural resources and exploiting positively what they have. So let's move on to the head, the Republic of Tatarstan, His Excellency Rostam Minighanov. He has many great practical ideas, and we're expecting from His Excellency to share with us his opinion on issues related to enhancement of global investments, trends, and shifts. And Your Excellency, you chair the Russia Islamic World Strategic Vision Group as well, in addition to your national responsibilities. And the question to you is basically what investment opportunities and success stories that can create this kind of dynamism between the Russian Federation and Tatarstan in particular, and what are your successful achievements that you need to share and scale up with this good participation of this summit? Excellency, the floor is yours.
Спасибо большое. Ассаламу алейкум ва рахматуллахи ва баракатух. Уважаемые почетные гости, дамы и господа, прежде всего хотел бы поприветствовать участников ежегодного инвестиционного форума, ну и, конечно же, выразить благодарность глубокую руководству Объединенных Арабских Эмиратов за организацию мероприятия, приглашение и возможность выступить. Также хочу от всей души поздравить всех с окончанием священного месяца Рамадан и прошедшим праздником Ураза-Байрам. Мы видим, как инвестиционный форум Объединенных Арабских Эмиратов с каждым годом динамично развивается, ищет новые формы и трансформации. Республика Татарстан является партнером и участником мероприятия с самого момента начала 2011 года. Ну и форум для нас – это площадка для презентации инвестиционных возможностей нашей республики, обмен опытом с зарубежными партнерами и налаживания новых контактов. Ну и, конечно, мы всегда большим удовольствием посещаем Арабские Эмираты, обмениваемся передовым опытом и, конечно же, многому здесь учимся. Тема сегодняшней дискуссии очень актуальная в свете происходящих сдвигов мировой экономики. Новая волна глобальных изменений, рост развивающихся рынков, непростая геополитическая обстановка оказывает серьезное влияние на мировой инвестиционный климат. С другой стороны, технологические прорывы с каждым годом становятся все более серьезные и масштабные. Мировая турбулентность, торговые и пошлинные войны, региональные конфликты и, как результат, уязвимость цепочек поставок создают множество неопределенностей и вызовов. Все это меняет приоритеты, снижает динамику инвестиций, заставляет сосредотачивать внимание на национальной экономической безопасности стран и регионов, ведет к меньшей открытости и усилению местного контроля. И, конечно же, нам в этой связи тоже очень интересно выслушать мнение уважаемых экспертов. Нашу страну не могут не беспокоить эти тренды и вызовы. Вместе с тем, Республика Татарстан, как регион России с развитой экономикой, основанной на инновациях и современных технологиях, ведет методичную работу по улучшению созданного изучения лучших практик, внедрения новых подходов. Мы активно, прежде всего, поддерживаем малый и средний бизнес, создаем благоприятный инвестиционный климат, внедряем зеленые технологии, проводим работу по адаптации к изменению климата, продвигаем принципы циркулярной экономики и устойчивого развития. Несмотря на рост в прошлом году инвестиций в основной капитал на 12,7%, то по иностранным инвестициям мы 2 года уже наблюдаем снижение. Тем не менее, мы наиболее активно сегодня работаем со странами Азии и Персидского залива. Привлечение инвесторов – одной из приоритетных задач республики. Вот по итогам прошлого года Республика Татарстан занимает 2-ю позицию в национальном рейтинге состояния инвестиционного климата субъектов Российской Федерации. В нашей республике создана, прежде всего, мощная инвестиционная и инновационная инфраструктура. Это множество площадок самого различного уровня и назначения. Прежде всего, это 2 особые экономические зоны, 5 территорий опережающих социально-экономического развития, сеть технопарков, промышленных парков и промплощадок, бизнес-инкубаторы, 3 IT-парка, технополисы. Для инвесторов созданы налоговые, таможенные и коммерческие преференции. Ну и самое главное, мы не боимся идти на эксперименты, используем новые формы работы. Экономика республики, она основана на нефтяной промышленности. У нас развита нефтепереработка, нефтехимия, В то же время мы крупный машиностроительный центр. Мы производим автомобили, самолеты, вертолеты, корабли, ну и другую машиностроительную продукцию. Республика полностью обеспечивает себя основными видами сельхозпродукции и активно в последнее время развиваем индустрию халяль, в том числе и в экспортном направлении. Но большая работа в республике ведется в части цифровизации всех отраслей экономики и госуправления. Наша республика – пилотный регион в России по исламскому банкингу, и наши данные подтверждают существенный рост интереса исламскому финансированию как граждан, так и финансовых организаций. Сегодня на нашем рынке присутствуют все основные продукты исламского финансирования. Они разработаны специалистами республики, сертифицированы в организации по бухгалтерскому учету и аудиту для исламских финансовых института АЙОФИ. Одним из важнейших инструментов работы с инвесторами и привлечения являются международные форумы, которые ежегодно проводятся в республике. Это Международный экономический форум «Россия. Исламский мир», Казань форум. Главное в нашей стране федеральная площадка для работы с исламскими странами. Хотел бы, пользуясь моментом, пригласить вас на 15-16 мая как раз на этот форум. Ну и хотел бы также доложить, что в прошлом году Россия принимала саммит стран БРИКС. Он прошел в столице нашей республики, где были представлены 36 государств, 24 страны были представлены первыми лицами. Важно, что в мероприятии участвовали руководители и представители 16 мусульманских государств, членов Организации исламского сотрудничества. Важным направлением внешней деятельности Татарстана исламский мир. Мы очень плотно взаимодействуем с партнерами из мусульманских государств, торгово-экономические, инвестиционные, научно-образовательные и культурных сферах. Вот вы сказали, по поручению президента страны, я возглавляю группу «Стратегическое видение России. Исламский мир». Вот в декабре прошлого года мы провели наше заседание в Малайзии, где принимал участие на нашем заседании премьер-министр Малайзии, глубокоуважаемый господин Анвар Ибрагим. По итогам 2024 года товарооборот нашей республики с государствами, входящими в Организацию исламского сотрудничества, вырос на 38% и составил 8 миллиардов долларов США. Реализуются совместные проекты с мусульманскими партнерами из Средней Азии, Ближнего Востока, Азии, Африки. Это в сферах поставок товаров и энергетики, нефтехимии, машиностроения, инфраструктурных проектов, высоких технологий, сельского хозяйства, финансов и инноваций. Множество совместных проектов реализовано с Турцией, Казахстаном, Узбекистаном, Туркменистаном. Ведется работа с эмиратскими холдингами Тавазун и Эмар. Ну и, конечно же, мы сегодня тоже здесь представили наш стенд. Приглашаю вас посетить, где также и представлен наш автомобиль «Аурус», который производится в нашей республике. В 2022 году на федеральном уровне, на всей России, мы отмечали 1100-летие принятия ислама в Волжской Булгарии. Это наши предки. А Казань в 2022 году была столицей организации, молодежной столицей Организации исламского сотрудничества. Вот в текущем году конференция министров культуры стран ОИС определила нашу столицу Казань и избрала культурной столицей исламского мира в 2026 году. Уважаемые дамы и господа, Республика Татарстан открыта для партнерства, заинтересована в инновациях. Приглашаю вас в Республику Татарстан для ознакомления с нашим опытом и инвестиционным потенциалом. еще раз хочу поблагодарить за возможность обратиться к вам, пожелать всем участникам плодотворных дискуссий, конструктивных встреч, новых интересных контактов и знакомств. Спасибо.
Right. Thank you so much, Excellency. Many thanks for the kind invitation to visit your exhibition here and for the forum that you are planning to have. And all of these great ideas that you shared in the collaboration and the emphasis that you had as well on areas related to sustainability. You mentioned regional cooperation. You mentioned as well working with other countries in your neighborhood and beyond. And you mentioned the Prime Minister of Malaysia, who is hosting next month, as we know, a very important summit for the ASEAN group with the GCC countries and China. If you haven't seen his speech or read it, please have a look at the Prime Minister Anwar of Malaysia speech and the articulation of his invitation to the summit of GCC, ASEAN, and China in May, which he published as well in Project Syndicate. That gives us an excellent segue to Madame Thuy. You are the vice chairwoman of Ving Group, and we're expecting from you in your position, and we just mentioned Southeast Asia, and earlier today, and not just today, in previous discussions with His Excellency, the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, we're talking about possible collaboration between the ASEAN and the Southeast Asian countries at large with the group of Arab countries, especially the pragmatism in areas related to trade, investment, technology transfer, and in these most interesting of times, on the dynamics of relations between the global trading giants, how you are navigating as countries and as companies, the kind of dynamic that we see between the emerging powers and the incumbent powers. So the floor is yours, Madam, to tell us what can we know more about how you are dealing with the shifting global power dynamics, and in particular, the impact on business as you lead it. Madam?
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, the UAE, for giving me the opportunity to be part of such a distinguished panel. I'm the only representative from the public, from the private sector here, so I'm very, very humble to be amongst the people here. Talking about volatility and war and trade wars, I remember waking up at 4 a.m. on Thursday to the news, last Thursday, to the news that the US imposed a 46% reciprocal tariff on Vietnam. And it was unexpected. It was a surprise. And I think the whole day, the whole nation was probably consumed by such a news. We're number 2, the second highest after Cambodia, who got the 49%. But after a little bit of surprise, our leadership immediately react to it. And I think by less than 48 hours, like 36 hours later, there was a conversation between the two head of states. And we started taking the first step toward having a discussion about not having a trade war and how we can make it happen. I think Vietnam was probably, different countries reacted differently, and you probably read it all on the news. But I think our leadership chose a different approach to the so-called trade war, so that we can have cooperation between countries. So that kind of setting stage for the conversation. I think I would like to first share a little bit about ASEAN and Southeast Asia and how we are reacting to this shifting dynamics in the world. And then I would like to talk more about Vietnam, which I know a lot more, and maybe a little bit about our group, since we're the only private representative here. So in the recent years, the global investment landscape has undergone significant shift, driven by rising geopolitical tensions and also disruption to the global supply chain, as many of you already mentioned today. Against this backdrop, Southeast Asia has emerged as a dynamic and resilient region, offering both strategic positioning as well as long-term growth potential. Across the region, we can observe that the governments and enterprises are adopting a forward-looking mindset. They investing in infrastructure, conducting regulatory reform, and digital infrastructure. Also, for instance, for Vietnam in particular, we continue expanding our industrial parks everywhere in Vietnam and improve regulatory transparency. While other countries like Singapore and Malaysia, for example, are actively cultivating innovation ecosystem to support high-tech industries. So these efforts are not only aligned with investor expectations, but also give the stability and predictability for the region, so that kind of demonstrate the region's readiness to adapt a more rapidly changing global environment. At the same time, our region in Southeast Asia and ASEAN is undergoing a structural transition. So from serving as the manufacturing base for the world to becoming a part of the global value chains. Enterprises like Vingroup in particular, we have identified this momentum and accelerating the investment in green technology, digital transformation, talent development. Let me talk a little bit about Vietnam in particular, because we are going through I think the period of growth that haven't seen for decades. So the government is optimizing. I think we're optimizing the government, merging the ministry, cutting the middle management, and reducing public sector significantly. Meanwhile, we're also investing in private sector, asking private sector to support. So Vingroup is the largest private conglomerate in Vietnam, and we have been asked in the recent weeks or month to invest in, like we started getting into green energy, for example. So last time I was here, we were not talking as much about green energy. Now we already committed to 20.5 gigawatt by 2030, and another 25, most of it is green energy, and another 25 gigawatt between 2030 and 2035. So 45.5 gigawatt between now and 2035. Just to benchmark, in the last 10 years, the whole country probably built about 13 gigawatts. And we have impact on projects like railway in Vietnam, ports, logistics, and many other projects. So we, as a private sector, we've been asked to take part in many infrastructure projects. Last thing, I'm also the chairman of VinFast, which is the electric vehicle startup within the group. We are number one in Vietnam, so larger than Toyota, larger than Hyundai, larger than any other incumbent automotive OEMs in Vietnam. We are expanding globally right now in 15 different countries. We are in the UAE as well, so we have an exhibition, I think in Hall 10, outside of ICC, and welcome everybody to come visit us, and welcome everybody to Vietnam and Southeast Asia. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much for these excellent inputs to our knowledge and how the private sector, the business sector at large, is partnering with governments in order to weather the storms of changes in the trade arrangements and tariffs. There are a couple of things I like to mention, but I understand that His Excellency Rossam wants to leave us. You have some engagement, Excellency. You are called for a bilateral, but we are continuing because we still have two distinguished speakers. But going back to Vietnam, for those who are not old enough to... thank you so much, Excellency. Thank you. Right. Thank you so much. So for those who are not old enough to follow up the good transformation in Japan, and those who didn't really have the time to follow the good progress of Korea, there is a good opportunity in a country like Vietnam to see how progress is happening in a very sustainable way. I am an admirer of your work as a country, investment in education and health, investment in infrastructure, partnership with the private sector, and investment in resilience. And very much pragmatic and smiling, regardless what's happening around you. I've been visiting your country frequently, so I'm revealing my bias to a great deal of success. Of course, there are challenges, but you have been always managed to overcome them. Now, from the Eastern Hemisphere to the West, to Europe, to Germany, and to someone who had been investing his life in public service as former minister and president of the German state of Baden-Württemberg, and of course the former European Commissioner for Energy, Digital Economy and Budget. I have a couple of questions for you, Excellency, on how Europe and Germany are dealing with the trade challenges and how to keep free trade alive. And another question on the bilateral relations between Europe, Germany, and the UAE. But as an introduction to that, and I'll be capitalizing on your tolerance, I've been in politics, so you won't be surprised by my question. Some of the assumptions of the great progress in Germany for many decades that had some assumptions, some of them are not with us, or they have been challenged. Cheap, sustainable supply of energy from Russia, defense and security arrangements with the US, and open markets for raw material and final products with China. To what extent you see these kind of pillars of development and progress continuing, they may have a comeback, and whether that what we see recently, including the important changes in the fiscal rules of the German constitution, have been dealt with in order to deal with some of the demands on defense. And as a proud European yourself, you read, like many of us, the alarming report of competitiveness by former Prime Minister Draghi, in which reflects the concern about the importance of investment in energy security, in digital transformation, and R&D. So I'm just giving that to you, Excellency, as a background for your intervention. And how do you see matters in Europe unfolding? And how do you see as well your bilateral relations with UAE and the Arab countries evolving? The floor is yours.
Dear moderator, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Germany is deeply concerned. What we are seeing in these days is an escalation of punitive tariffs. We are walking into a trade war coming from one biggest player, reactions from other big players. So we need a group of willing who want to de-escalate, who want to normalize trade, who are convinced that globalization ongoing brings added value to all citizens, to all nations, to all markets. In these days, is it a trade war? Question mark. World trade is destabilized, deeply destabilized, and investors are worried. Investors may be a public investment, may be a private investment. They need clarity, trust and confidence. They need investments based on rule of law, ownership guarantees, openness and transparency. And we see more and more the contrary. So I think such a platform can be a good momentum to speak about transparency, about trust and confidence, about openness, fair and free trade. What can Europe offer? We are open for new, additional or deeper free trade agreements. Let me mention Mercosur, let me mention India, let me mention many other countries, and no doubt this region is a kind of a bridge builder between Asia, Africa and Europe at least. And so I think more and more European players are willing to invest in the United Arab Emirates and the whole region. And on the other side, we are inviting investors from this region to come to Europe. Take our industries, automotive sector, or renewable energy sector, or pharmaceutical sector, or chemical sector, or food sector, or ICT sector, just to mention some important. So again, I think openness and globalization should not be out, should be the future for our kids and for added value for 8 billion citizens. You mentioned energy. Let me be quite clear. Energy never should be a weapon. It should be a product or a service, but not a weapon. And for some of the rich energy countries, energy was and is a weapon, and energy prices in parallel. And so in these days, or since 2022, Europe and Germany, we are reducing imports of gas and oil and nuclear sources from Russia to Europe, because we are not willing to finance Putin's war against Ukraine. Let me be quite clear. We see that Russia is responsible for this war. It's just Russia and nobody else. And we are backing and helping Ukraine as good as possible. And we are on the way to a hybrid war, and we are fearing a real war can be the case. And that's the reason why Europe and Germany are investing in military, in defense, are investing in a common European strategy to be ready to survive a next war. We are not willing to see this war, we are not starting this war, but we have to be ready to avoid damages and to say to everybody, don't start a war against Europe. In general, I'm sure that trade is still alive, that global trade is still alive. And my hope and expectation is that a group of countries, of markets, of global players, of private investors, of industrial players are in a same position to fight for global trade, for free trade and fair trade.
Right. Thank you so much. And if I can just have a quick follow-up question of your neighborhood in the Mediterranean and the Arab countries and in the UAE. And with all of these development that we had seen, what are you seeing as a potential area of further collaboration in terms of trade investment with this country here in the UAE and your country, or perhaps between Europe and the Arab region and the Mediterranean? Excellency. Yeah, it's for you again. Just a follow-up on what you just said. No, I was asking whether, based on what you said now, you covered in an excellent way what we have been seeing during the years. But basically with these recent developments, what are you seeing as a potential in future relations between Germany, UAE, between Europe and the Arab countries?
It's about better and deeper trade relations and common rules, therefore. And so an agreement, Arab Emirates and Europe, and to deepen it for more exports, for more imports, for more investments, even for people, young generation from here to European universities, young European coming to here. I think there's a lot of potential, and we have to invest it by politicians from Brussels, Berlin, but from Abu Dhabi as well.
Right, very good. Thank you so much. Signal of hope and further collaboration. And now, last but not least, Madam Prime Minister, you were the first Prime Minister woman of your country. Your country always comes in a good context of a country with great potential, with people with young population, with resources, with potential for trade, investment, technological collaboration. So what we should really learn differently from Your Excellency on how to optimize the opportunities and how to gain more from what you have of potential.
Merci beaucoup. Je veux d'abord remercier les Émirats arabes unis à travers ton président pour l'accueil que nous avons reçu, moi et ma délégation, et aussi remercier les organisateurs et en particulier le ministre du Commerce extérieur. Alors, par rapport à la République démocratique du Congo, vous l'avez dit, nous avons un potentiel énorme, que ce soit en termes de minerais stratégiques, que ce soit en termes de terres arables, que ce soit en termes de ressources hydriques. Maintenant, c'est vrai que la réalité est que nous avons d'énormes défis en termes d'infrastructures routières, chemins de fer, en termes d'énergie électrique. Et tout ça, pour moi, tous ces défis, et en particulier un des défis que nous avons, c'est la guerre que nous avons à l'Est. Ces défis, pour moi, sont vraiment des opportunités de développement et de développement durable. Et pour ça, en termes de développement durable, nous avons par exemple le chef de l'État, M. Félix Antoine Tshisekedi, avec le gouvernement, nous avons mis en place par exemple toute une aire protégée de plus de 500 000 kilomètres avec au moins 108 000 kilomètres carrés plutôt de forêt. Monsieur le Président du pays voisin, Monsieur le Président Sassou Nguesso, vous a parlé du bassin du Congo. La RDC fait partie, 90% du territoire de la RDC fait partie du bassin du Congo. Donc, en termes de biodiversité, de transition énergétique, vous voyez bien que nous sommes vraiment dans cette capacité de pouvoir offrir beaucoup, d'autant plus qu'aujourd'hui, quand on parle de changement climatique, on a vraiment besoin de cela. De la même manière, j'ai parlé des minerais stratégiques, nous sommes en possibilité aujourd'hui, avec ces minerais stratégiques, de travailler sur la transition énergétique que nous pouvons offrir. De la même manière, on a parlé de notre faiblesse en termes d'infrastructures, mais en termes d'opportunités et d'investissements, justement, c'est que nous avons cette capacité de pouvoir absorber les investissements. Mais pour pouvoir le faire, évidemment, la République démocratique du Congo a commencé à travailler sur un certain nombre de réformes, particulièrement pour améliorer le climat des affaires avec cette nécessité d'assurer une sécurité judiciaire et juridique aux investisseurs. Nous avons mis en place un certain nombre de lois et de textes réglementaires, comme par exemple dans le cadre du partenariat public-privé, parce que cela nous offre l'opportunité de donner aux investisseurs privés de manière directe des partenariats gagnant-gagnant dans lesquels chaque investisseur peut venir trouver des marchés. Vous l'avez dit, nous sommes un marché de plus de 120 000 millions de personnes avec 60% de jeunes et donc c'est un gros marché de consommation. Nous avons 9 pays voisins et ces 9 pays voisins sont aussi un marché potentiel pour toute personne qui va investir au niveau de la RDC. Donc vous voyez que en investissant en RDC, il y a moyen dans la diversification de l'économie, en allant sur les chaînes de valeur pour transformer, que ce soit au niveau des minerais, avec la transition énergétique, nous avons commencé d'entreprendre une transformation avec la création de batteries. Nous avons au niveau de l'agriculture la possibilité d'aller dans cette transformation qui va nous permettre déjà rien qu'à l'interne de pouvoir servir 120 millions de personnes. Alors, un exemple de partenariat que nous avons aujourd'hui, par exemple avec les Émirats arabes unis, c'est nous sommes en train de travailler sur un port en eau profonde au niveau de Banana. Nous le faisons avec DP World. Donc, c'est juste des exemples sur lesquels on peut voir aujourd'hui comment la RDC, en ayant ce potentiel de consommateurs, ce potentiel de capital humain avec 60% de jeunesse, de personnes jeunes, vont pouvoir être prêts à recevoir les investissements. Et comme je l'ai dit, avec l'ensemble des mesures que nous avons prises dans l'amélioration du climat des affaires, nous sommes en position aujourd'hui d'être vraiment un marché pour tout investisseur en République démocratique du Congo. Et d'ailleurs, ceux qui pourront aller visiter notre site, au niveau notre stand ici, pourront, en discussion avec l'Agence nationale de promotion de l'investissement, pouvoir se rendre compte de ce que, par exemple, le code d'investissement offre en termes de potentialité, en termes d'exonération pour tout investisseur qui vient en République démocratique du Congo.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Excellency Prime Minister. That was a wonderful kind of a conclusion of this session with a country with great potential. Can we be more forward-looking despite what we have seen during the last few days of changes in the rules of the game? And can we be as well optimistic because all of the panelists, without exception, didn't stop at the challenges but the shared opportunities for investment. The managing director of the International Monetary Fund was here in the UAE in February when she gave or shared a kind of line of wisdom with the participants saying if you want really to do better in the future, you need to adhere to rules in 3 areas. All of them are starting with D. Digital transformation. The second is diversification, and you in different ways mentioned the issue about diversification, not just of resources, but in partnerships as well. The third, she mentioned something about deregulation. This means leveling the playing field. If I was in the room, and I was not, I would have reminded her of 2 important other Ds that needed to be added. One is related to data. And all of the investors here would be very much in need for updates on data, information, and the knowledge that they need to have to invest more. Actually, many of our countries are victims of bad perception, including as an African and as an Arab, I can tell you that our countries are being perceived much, much worse than what they deserve because of the fact that they don't really have better data, especially in areas related to opportunities, the credit worthiness, and actually a very good report about data on credit is called the GEM. It's the kind of a general database for emerging markets. Is telling us that the default cases with African countries and emerging markets are much less than what's being perceived. But we need really to give more information. And the other and final D is basically about demographics. All of you, without exception, mentioned something about education, investment in human capital, issues about population and jobs. And I think it's all here gets back. His Excellency Sheikh Ibrahim reminded us of the investments in education. Would say, well, invest, definitely in education, human capital, in infrastructure, including digital infrastructure, and invest in resilience against shocks and disruptions. And that requires all of what you said in the spirit of partnership and collaboration and getting ready to all of these changes that we're seeing around our world. Having said that, I cannot thank our hosts enough. I cannot thank the government of the United Arab Emirates and the beautiful, vibrant city of Abu Dhabi of bringing us all here and being a gracious host. Please join us in and join me in thanking our distinguished panel. Thank you so much.